Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by the Time We Discuss studio for another engaging conversation with yet another exciting professional. This channel is really young, so I appreciate you hitting all those usual buttons like, subscribe, bell, all that good stuff. Doing this helps the channel grow and helps me get even more obscure professionals. I'm still trying to get that animal trainer. All that being said, stick around because I have Kristen here and it's time we discuss self-publishing. Today we have Kristen Williams with me. Kristen, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, it's good to be here.
Kristen is a self-published author. Kristen, I got to be honest, when I think of authors or when I think of anyone that is involved in creative works, I think of the Disney movie Ratatouille. In the movie, they talk about, there's the book by, I think, Gustav, and he has this book, Anyone Can Cook. And in the end, what they really talk about on that is that, you know, a great cook can come from anywhere. And I like to see that as a parallel to all artists, you know, whether you're a painter or a musician or a sculptor or an author. You know, I really feel like a great author can really come, or a great artist can come from anywhere. That it really comes down to inspiration and drive and resources. So, Kristen, I'd really like to start with this. Tell us about your book, The Inept Mother, and specifically what inspired you to write this.
So I went to, just kind of like to preface a little bit, my degree formally is in fine art. And so that did not pan out with a career really trajectory, other than I took some coding classes that got me into web and, you know, did things of that sort. But for the book itself, I always love to read. Those who are in my life know that like books are a passion of mine. That's my escape. That's my outlet. You know, all my frustrations. I pick up a book, get into another world, and that's kind of what it is. So one day I had a meltdown while I was pregnant, and I was driving to the store, and I thought there's no manual for moms who, one, fresh out of a pandemic, kind of still in it, because, you know, that had never happened in our generations before. And why aren't people having more real conversations about motherhood and parenthood in general? Because my husband didn't know that this is like the stuff that we were going to be dealing with. And there's really no real life guide, like a real no. And, you know, what to expect when you're expecting. Sure, you know, you can read all of the things that could possibly go wrong, or your baby born with full mouth of teeth and things like that. But that wasn't what I was looking for or hoping to find that like I could resonate with. So I thought, well, why don't I just write it? And it was more than just like an Instagram post or a blog. It was something that I really wanted to expand on. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just figure out how to write a book. And that's kind of where it came from.
That's awesome. And what you say, that resonates with me very well, because similarly, it's like, you know, I remember growing up, you know, you look at your parents and the things that they do and the punishments they dish out and whatever. And it seemed from a child's perspective, they have it all together. They know exactly what they're doing as a parent. And
Yes.
then, you know, you grow up to be a parent and you realize like, no, you know, everyone just is kind of faking it. You know, we all hope we're doing the right thing.
Yes.
You know, in the TV show Modern Family, Phil Dunphy has this line where he says something to the effect of, you fake it and you just hope you end up not raising a serial killer or something like that.
Yes. And that's we're getting into, and with my kids' ages right now, we're getting into their figuring out that not everyone's your friend at school. Like we call, oh, your friend at school, your friend, you know, oh, all our friends sit down. Well, there's people that like you have to act a certain way. And the phrase of this week is treat everyone how you want to be treated. And then it's like I'm having the conversation with my husband, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're figuring out that there's not nice people and people will be mean. And it's like having to go through all that. And one part of the book is having to do this without my own mom because she passed away. So it's like I can't, having that back and forth with her, I don't have. So I really rely on this group of friends to be, hey, why is my kid acting this way? Is this normal? I don't know what to do. And, you know, I'll text my dad too. And so, cause he's still around. He moved back up to Pennsylvania. And so he's around more often now, but it's just not having that. There's no guidebook. And even as this written, it's not, you know, end all be all. I'm saying this because I'm holding it in front of me.
Show it one more time. Show it up. Hey.
And one thing, just as a note, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, doesn't have to be big. It's a quite tiny book to get started. But it's called The Inept Mother, a collection of musings about life, grief, and motherhood, because it talks about me, just generally my life as a mom. And again, very singular perspective, not all encompassing, but it's really just, yeah, trying not to screw up your kid, but also to like take time for yourself and not have a complete meltdown and do all these things at the same time while we're working full time and figuring out life and all of that.
So you talk about working full time and then also trying to write this book at the same time. You have children, you have a husband, he has his career. How challenging was it for you to balance all of that while trying to follow this passion, essentially?
It was, because I was so passionate about it, it was really easy to kind of spit the words out. And really all I did was I started a Google Doc because I was, I have notes in my phone, just like write a chapter about this, write a chapter about this. And then sitting down to actually formulate the thought. It took some time. It took longer than I wanted it to, until I gave myself an unrealistic deadline that I rushed. And now I have found misspellings in the book, even though I had an editor. But it was something that I was like, no, this is going to pick up momentum once I start doing it. And of course, I started it. Then I delivered the child that I was pregnant with when I started it. And then it took some time. But while I was writing it, I also started planning, I think I'm going to do a podcast with this. And it did, short-lived podcast, because life. But it was, I think because it was a shorter book, it was easy to stay excited about and easy to like, okay, I'm going to make time for this. And I did most of it on my phone, typing on my phone as the baby was napping or what have you, being able to sit down in those first 8 weeks of my third child, and kids were still home from school because it was summer, and all of that goes into it. But because it was so exciting, it didn't seem like it was work until the end, when I was hitting that like deadline that I gave myself, self-imposed deadline. But then it was a rush to, okay, let's get it out the door. Let's get it out to print, like do all those things. So for future work, I never planned to write a nonfiction book, a real life book. I always, in my brain, it was, I'm going to write fiction, romance stories, all of that. That I can see. I've had a book written for 10 years that I'm just like, it's sitting in my Google Docs waiting to be finished. And it's a fiction book. That it's just sitting. That's just waiting.
I'll interject for 1 second. We were watching the series on Netflix called I think it's called Rewind the 90s. Which is interesting. Having lived through the 90s, that it's interesting remembering what I went through versus looking back as an adult and seeing all the stuff I completely missed because I was a child then and now I'm an adult.
Right.
But one thing they talk about was writing specifically, and they said that I believe it was now. I don't think they're referring to the 90s. I think they're referring to now. The best-selling genre is romance. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was very interesting. So you mentioned romance novels. That's kind of triggered a memory.
Yes. And I think it's because we're looking, the world, this is going to sound crazy. I think the world got too real during the pandemic. We were exposed to so much constant media because there was nothing else to do. We couldn't leave our houses. So TVs and books were our escape from reality. And I think it really kicked up. And I'm going to reference another social media with the kind of comeuppance of TikTok. There's a whole thing on there called Book Talk. There's a whole thing that just talks about like really the hot books right now, the romance books that are popular. And I think too, they're able to target more people, but then stores now, if you go into a bookstore, you will see a whole Book Talk section. So it's translating into not just a digital experience, but into like you're walking into a physical bookstore, and there's going to be ones that are Book Talk, which are now bestsellers because they've been so popular online. So it's a whole new world with books.
Wow, that is fascinating. That is fascinating. So it's really neat too. You talked about using, writing on your phone and Google Docs. It's really cool that, essentially not only can an author come from anywhere, you can use any tools at any time, that's really, really interesting. Doing it all over again, how would you change your workflow? How would you change your process?
I think I had an outline, a kind of a general idea of where I wanted to go with it. I wish I would have taken more time to really develop out the chapters. And that's very critical because at the same time, it doesn't bother me that some of the chapters are only like a page and a half long because it's just that thought. But I going back, if I were to do a volume two, I think I really would take more time and maybe talk to some of my friends who have kids around the same age, get their perspective, kind of do a more collective experience rather than just a singular experience. And someone did say that when I was writing it, they're like, well, why don't you do a chapter on teenagers? And because that wasn't my immediate experience, I didn't feel comfortable writing about it because it wasn't something that I could speak to in real life.
That
So
makes sense.
yeah, volume two may come in 3 years when I do have a teenager, but 4 years. But until then.
So you talked earlier about envisioning maybe writing fiction, as you're growing up and into adulthood and everything. You thought maybe a fiction book would be on the table. Do you think you would continue going down the road and exploring that more, or is that
Oh,
just
absolutely.
yeah?
Yes. Yes. I think writing, not only is our book something that just that's I'm everyone knows me. Books are my thing. I get Amazon and Barnes and Noble's gift cards for every holiday of my life. And I'm never mad about it. I would really like to, because when I sit and read books and I'll go back and forth with my girlfriends, the worlds that authors can create and just you can have full on conversations about a fake world that does not exist. And my girlfriend and I were texting back and forth the other day about one book that we're reading, and we're talking. I'm like, this is my favorite conversation, like ever, because we're having a full on conversation about magic systems and what goes into it. And I'm like, this isn't even real, but it just gives you that outlet to live, in your brain elsewhere and think things through. And I would love to be able to create a world that people talk about.
That is amazing. Just saying that made me think too. Like people do that too with any media. The movies, video games, and people get
Yeah.
so like defensive, and adamant about certain like games or whatever. And it's an interesting world in which we live in, where so many different media outlets.
Yes. And not even just like I started reading, of course, the romance led me into kind of more fantasy worlds and dragons and things like that. And I was a big Game of Thrones watcher. Like we did that whole thing. So that wasn't new. But now I find myself picking up books that are 100% not romance, just happen to have a magic structure in it that I'm thinking, oh, that would be really cool. So I just finished one of those and I texted one of my guy friends and I said, you would really like this. And their first question was, is it a romance novel? And I was like, surprisingly not. It's not a romance novel. So, if I'm telling you that it's good, it's good. So, and it's just that having that ability and that talent to create that, in my mind, that magic of creating worlds, just, as a regular human that's awesome to me. So, yeah, that is something I would definitely achieve to do in my life.
Awesome. Let me know if you start going down that road, because I would definitely be interested in hearing more about that.
Might be another decade, Dan, but we'll get there.
Tell me about the self-published process. What was that like? You mentioned you had an editor. Was that someone that you was it a friend? Was it someone you hired through the internet? What was that whole that self-published process like?
So, like any person looking to do anything, I took to Google when how do I self-publish a book? And actually, one of my favorite authors, she's done a lot of self-publishing. She's worked in publishing houses. She's done just ebooks. Her website was actually one of the ones that I started on, and she had a extensive list on here's some great things tools to help self-publish. I also started looking at local bookstores, indie bookstores, and clicking on so you're an author, part of their website. And they were saying if you're there, you can't just walk in and hand them a stack of books and say, hey, can you sell these? You have to go through a printer, and they listed out certain printers that they work with. So it was kind of doing that, like hunting and pecking on things that I was familiar with. But ultimately what I ended up with is there is similar to Google Docs. It's an online document system called Reedsy, Reedsy, fairly certain. I'll send you that link. And it is for authors to build and construct their books it gets you in connection with editors based on your certain genre. You can put out once you have your document ready to kind of get to a certain point of review, you can send it and say, hey, this is a quick first outline, first rough draft. You can do it for business writing. It's, any kind of writing. It's a website geared towards helping writers get in touch with editors. So that's initially what I came in contact with, found my editor through there, and then we kind of connected outside of it and did Zooms and talked through it. And it was a very surreal experience because I'm like, this is real. Now this is real. I have someone who I'm paying to review my book. And I have an editor, and I can say that I have an editor, and that's just a very weird experience, a very cool, weird experience. But because of that website being so friendly and easy to facilitate from a web background, very good UI and UX experience, that kind of really helped to get me to a point of, okay, I feel confident about this now. Like, I wasn't just in a Google Doc, which in my brain was very amateur of me, but it parlayed so well to their platform and what I was able to do with it. So that kind of helped really kind of put the bow on it, so to speak.
Going back to your education, you talked about how you went to school for design, essentially. How well do you think that prepared you for something completely unrelated as being a writer? And going back in time, do you think you would have explored other avenues of education or certificates, or how do you think all of that factors into you as a writer?
I think I think I still would have done the art. I think I also would have potentially double majored in creative writing. That is something after the fact that I had looked back on and thought, maybe this is something that I want to go into. Then I got my master's in something completely unrelated, but which parlayed into my current career experience. But I would like to be able to, I think the art process and going through all of that with the having to create things, not just with words, would still be a big part of kind of who I am and where I've gotten to be. So I think going back, if I could do it, double major with art and creative writing, which I feel like in my brain goes hand in hand now that it's just kind of who I am as a person. But at the time, I never would have thought, let me just tack this on.
That makes sense. That makes sense. When I talk to other people, a lot of times I say to them, if you're starting out in your career, what do you need to do to get to your point? If you're, changing careers, what do you need to do to get to get to your point? But it sounds like pretty much, as I said in the beginning, it's almost like anyone can write. You can just kind of, pick up your phone and start typing away, or your laptop or a pencil or, whatever. It seems like there's really nothing, no special requirements, so to speak.
That's truly, and to Ratatouille and all of that, anyone can write. And I did some kind of cursory Googling to see if something out there existed like this, just because I was like, if someone's already done it, I don't want to rewrite it. But then at the same time, it's from their perspective. I want this to be mine. And again, very tiny book, not a ton in there, very quick read. But then it did jump to, my girlfriend and I did a podcast for several months talking about dissecting each chapter of the book. And that was a really fun, again, it ended because life went different ways. I got a new job, couldn't really put time towards it, but it also taught me how to edit audio, and I learned how to do intro tracks. And so it was just more experience building into the eclectic knowledge in my brain. And it was something that was very important to me and it still is. I still love that I did this. And honestly, I think people forget that I did because I did very little posting on the social media about it other than for the podcast. But that doesn't make me any less proud to do it. Even if only 2 people did it, I did it. And I can say for myself that I published this book by myself with the help of some websites. But there's really no limit to education requirements, at least for this. Business writing and things, probably, but not stuff.
And I'm going to echo what you said, because I can relate to that to a degree, is that, having a creative project and finishing it and knowing that I did this and people like this, it's a huge feather in the cap, and that's awesome. You should obviously be very proud of that book. That's a huge accomplishment. For me, I can't write anything. I'm a terrible writer. So I have a lot of respect for anyone that can really do that, because I cannot.
Music though, because I have those albums downloaded.
Thank you. um, completely unrelated to anything. I generally like to ask some kind of surprise question that has nothing to do with the person's line of work, something usually completely random. So, Kristen, your question today. Um, Given there are no legal restrictions or requirements, okay, if you could have any kind of animal as a pet, what would you have and why?
A hippopotamus. Um,
Just clarify, you said hippopotamus, right? Not,
hippopotamus.
yeah.
Yes. Well, I want a very nice hippopotamus. I don't want one. I think it was like Pablo Escobar's hippos eventually ate him. I want a nice one. I want a cute one. And it all stems from the Christmas song, I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas. It's something I grew up and it just became my favorite. And actually, this Christmas, we were decorating my dad's tree with him, and all the kids, there's a little hippopotamus ornament that plays the song. And all the kids, the nieces and nephews and my kids are all hitting the button repeatedly. So for Christmas, my dad got everybody, every single child, a hippopotamus ornament. And so now Reagan walks around with all three of them, hits the buttons on all three, and then walks around the house. So, yes, a hippopotamus.
I love that. I love that. I guess it was probably kids were younger, so I'm going to say maybe 5 years ago. I guess we went to the zoo with them, and that was the first time I'd seen a hippopotamus in person in a long time, and forgot just how big they are. They are massive animals.
Yes. Like a solid creature.
Yes, yes, and that's something. That's great.
Yeah.
Last thing, I also like to give my guests an opportunity to speak about something which they're passionate about, some kind of pet project or a cause which you believe in or the job they work at. Anything in particular that you would like to plug while you have the floor?
Just supporting local bookstores. They're so important. They bring so much life and magic and culture to certain areas. And that's another goal of mine, to own a bookstore when I grow up, which is not right now. So it's just, supporting those people who are trying to share this magic that I love so much with the community.
All right, that's great. Great stuff. So helping the local bookstores helps the local community, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Kristen, thank you so much for joining me today on Time We Discuss. It was awesome speaking with you.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for stopping by the studio. My name is Dan, and this is Time We Discuss. I really enjoyed speaking with Kristen, and I hope you enjoyed the time too. Can't believe she wrote so much of that book on her phone. That is amazing. If you enjoyed the content or learned something interesting, do me a solid and comment, like, share, subscribe, all those good things. Add a comment if you have a profession that you'd like me to cover, or hit me up on social media. If you'd like to join me in the studio, please follow the sign-up link in the description or visit timewediscuss.com. We'll get you on the schedule. Ask your friends or coworkers to do the same. When you sign up to be part of the show, use promo code Parenthood. This way I know you came after watching or listening to this segment. That'll do it. See you next time on Time We Discuss.